Bob Palma would like to say just a few words about Bethlehem.
Carrie and I thought it was rather appropriate that we're giving the last of these so-called testimonials, and that the Beckers gave the first, because when Carol Becker gave her talk, What Bethlehem Means to Me, why, it was the excitement of starting a new church. And for Carrie and I, the excitement of what Bethlehem means is that finally we got to go to a scripturally sound congregation that already existed, and we didn't have to start yet another one like we'd been a part of twice out in Brownsburg. And so that's kind of what Bethlehem means to us in a nutshell, is the fact that as things kind of deteriorated in Brownsburg, and first the monks and then our friend Cloanne left, that finally when that congregation dissolved for reasons that weren't all that nice, why we had a place to come, and we're very, very thankful for that. At the time, of course, we didn't know that the Lord was going to place our daughter and son-in-law and our two grandchildren just a couple miles up the road here, because they had just gotten married and they didn't even live here yet. So we have the added pleasantry of getting to see them quite often. What Bethlehem really means to us is kind of reflected in this series of 4 covers on the Saturday Evening Post from 1943. I'll leave this out in the hall. They were by Norman Rockwell, and it took off of a speech in 1940 by Franklin Roosevelt called The Four Freedoms in the United States. And you'll recognize them. You've all seen the posters. The first is the freedom of religion, or the freedom of worship. The second is the freedom of speech, and freedom from want, and freedom from fear. You've all seen these posters, and to us, I reflect on it quite often when we're driving around 465. It's 28 miles up here from Brownsburg. And in our country, we do have the freedom to worship where we want to worship and how we want to worship. And this is pretty important to us. It is something that I reflect on probably every other Sunday morning when we're on our way up here, because there isn't much traffic at 8:30 in the morning on 465. And so it is important to be able to seek out a congregation where God's Word is preached in its purity, and the very type of sermon that we heard this morning. There's not a fourth of the pastors in metropolitan Indianapolis who could preach that sermon, I don't believe. And what a privilege it is to be able to come here every Sunday with the guarantee that that's what we're going to hear. And we're going to hear it because we need to hear it, and we're going to hear it because it's the truth. And this, in a nutshell, is what it means to us. And we're very happy to be here, happy to be a part of the growing building fund that we're going to have, and looking forward to being in the new congregation, the new building, I should say. I'd like to put in a plug for Pastor while I'm here and help. Well, he didn't ask me to, honest. September 15th, which was 7 or 8 weeks ago, I had a friend in town from in the Studebaker Club who's lives in Sun City, Arizona. Now he moved from Omaha, Nebraska when they retired. And it was a long story, but I picked him up in the middle of Michigan, and he stayed with us overnight, and I took him to the Indianapolis airport the next day to fly back to Sun City, Arizona. This gentleman had just lost his wife of 54 years. She had passed away 6 weeks before he sat in that chair. And Pastor didn't know that. Pastor had no way of knowing that. But she had passed away 2 days after their 54th wedding anniversary. And this man and his wife, 2 years ago, had lost a 40-year-old daughter to breast cancer. They had 2 daughters, and 2 years ago they lost one of them to breast cancer. So this man's heart was heavy, and he is a Christian. I have no doubt about it. He's a very good friend. And Pastor delivered a sermon that Sunday that's entitled The Compassionate Heart of Jesus. And I actually had a tear running down my cheek because I knew how much Pastor was speaking to my friend right here. Pastor didn't know it. And as we left the service, my friend Denny shook Pastor's hand, and he thanked him sincerely. He said, "Thank you so much. You were speaking right to my heart." And later that week, we got a little note from Denny, just to thank you. And it says, "Bob and Carrie, thanks for a great time. I enjoyed your pastor as it seemed he was talking to me. Got home right on time, busy catching up today, Denny." The reason I bring this up is, over the internet today, we hear a lot from friends and former friends who have sickness and death, and we often wonder, what do we say to those people, especially if they live far away? Well, through the work of Bob and our wonderful recordings and everything, Pastor's sermon, "The Compassionate Heart of Jesus," is available 24/7. And since that time, I had another friend that lives up in Bristol, Indiana, who lost a daughter. He's in his 60s or 70s, and his daughter died a couple weeks ago. And I sent him a link to that sermon. I have personally watched that sermon 4 times at home on our computer because I like that sermon so much. And I said, "Frank, please listen to this pastor's sermon at your leisure. It's video, it's live. You see him giving the sermon." And he emailed me later in the week and said, "Gee, Bob, thanks a lot. I really needed that." So he had taken the 16 minutes to see it. So I would advise you, if you have friends, you hear about people that are really going through hard times due to the death or sickness of a loved one, a child or something, link to our homepage, look up "The Compassionate Heart of Jesus" from September 15th. Click on it, get them the link, send the link to your friends, and say, "I can't offer you more sympathy or more comfort than our pastor will give you in this sermon. And I promise you they'll thank you for it." I know it works because if you look on some of Pastor's sermons, they give a count as to how many times that's been clicked on, how many times it's been heard, and most of them 3 or 4 hits. Well, that sermon, "The Compassionate Heart of Jesus," has got about 23 hits already. So I know that people I've told about have listened to it. And Pastor, wherever you are, where'd he go? Well, he left. Well, anyhow, thanks a lot for that, Pastor. It's a wonderful sermon, and it's a wonderful chance for us to evangelize to friends that are far away when they're facing trouble. And we're happy to be a part of the congregation. We're looking forward to the new building with everybody. Thank you.